Welcome back to A Screenwriter's Journey. It's day 16, and for some reason I've gone back to the beginning of my script again. And I'm not 100% sure why. I hope I didn't mess up the order of the days here. So let's see, I've gone back to page 3 with the dialogue between Paul and Holly. And I guess I'm just giving it the old tweak again. The idea here, of course, is to set up Paul is somewhat of a mentor to her, although not quite in the Obi-Wan Kenobi sense. But I guess I'm tweaking the dialogue based on, again, what I have written going forward or later scenes, and then you realize, I've either got to change my current dialogue or I've got to go back and change something else. So I'm reading along with you to find out what I'm thinking here to make it different. Okay, I think part of the reason was this whole 60-40, 20-30, 20-80, whatever. The more I thought about that, I don't know that I really thought that was such a great idea. And then something struck me, and I thought, is she being a babysitter or is she being a nanny? So I thought I'd give it a try as a nanny, and I'm not sure, spoiler alert, I did change it back to babysitter. But I wondered, would a nanny make it sound even less appealing, or in her own mind, is what I'm doing even more tedious and meaningless if I'm her nanny? But then I realized a nanny, strictly speaking, of course, is someone who lives with a family and takes care of their kids. In this case, there are no parents, and so that didn't really fit, and I don't know that it really matters. So I'm just sort of tinkering with the dialogue here. Okay, so Paul, I do remember this. I decided that Paul needs to give her, instead of just spewing out these facts, give her some hope that, hey, you've done a great job here. And there I go, change it back to babysitter. But Paul's purpose in this is to say, look, you've done a great job. If you continue to going well, then you're going to do great things. Because I picture him, checking in with her, sort of being obviously her superior officer and kind of the go-to person that she has certainly conversed with over the years. And he has probably gotten her this job in Miami or recommended it to her. And so I'm just kind of fiddling with how Holly reacts. And it's funny because it's not so much, you know how they're going to react and you have that thought in mind as the writer, but how to write that so the reader and eventually hopefully the director and the actors will read it and they'll say, okay, I get it. And you can see I've tried like 4 different ways to write that. And again, it's funny because once you get on the set, it all pretty much goes out the window. Because by then the director knows what he wants or she wants. The actresses know it, how they're going to play it. And so you've done all this work to make it a very easy and good script to read, hopefully. And that is simply the job. It's the blueprint, right? It's nothing more than that. Never going to be seen by more than maybe a dozen people, it could be more than that, but certainly the audience isn't going to be given a copy of your script to read when they go in and sit down and watch the movie. So I'm kind of buttoning up this scene, trying to get out of it and leaving it with kind of a feel-good sense. But then, as Paul says right there in other news, have you told her? Because that is pretty much going to change everything. And it changes Holly's demeanor and hopefully gives us a little foreshadowing into, even though she's super eager to move on, she is going to have to do a little bit of diplomacy with Lexi, and is she going to be able to? This is very interesting because I'm still wondering why I went back after being on page, almost 60, and I've jumped back here to rework this opening. And I'm not making any substantial changes, but I'm maybe getting a little bit hung up on what exactly their maybe relationship is, how they're going to interact. Obviously, other than when Lexi was a little girl, this is the first time we've seen them together. So I'm trying to establish a few things, most of which is that Holly has cooked her this meal that Lexi wasn't expecting. We know that from this that Holly maybe isn't the greatest cook or doesn't cook a lot. And so, yeah, at this point, I'm trying to come up with some super not on the nose way to get this across to the audience. Let's see if I can. Okay, so yeah, so my idea there is that to get across the idea that Holly is maybe handier with fixing appliances than she is with cooking dinner. And then I don't know if this is too on the nose when Holly says, my favorite / only niece. Obviously, it just occurs to me now, growing up, Holly must have told, because Lexi has obviously been in school and stuff, and she knows about, people have two parents, people have brothers and sisters, people that have aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, or cousins in her case. And Holly would have had to told her that she doesn't have any cousins. She has no really other relations. Yeah, that's very interesting. I guess hopefully that could all get implied, maybe through that one favorite / only niece. That would probably explain some stuff in maybe a fairly easy way, but certainly you're not going to have some dialogue where they sit around talking about all of their backstory. So let's just keep forging ahead. I'm talking to myself as the writer and on the screenwriter's journey, to say what is going through mostly Lexi's mind right now. I mean, picture yourself as almost 18 years old. You've grown up in what you think is a pretty nice situation. Your aunt's raising you, but for you that's normal, because however you're raised, whatever your situation is, that becomes your normal for the most part. And then she is basically having the rug pulled out from under her. And so I thought, well, what, in the real world, what would lead someone to do what Holly's doing in Lexi's mind? And so what I came up with is, oh my gosh, are you dying? Or am I dying? Literally. So at that point, Holly knows she's got to basically come clean, because it's a movie and you can't beat around the bush forever. So then, as before, she brings up the part about her mother. And I do like that. Cooked a decent meal and now I've got no appetite. Holly wants to press her on this, and so I'm just really fiddling around with, again, the how do you get this across? Some people and I'm not saying this is bad, it's probably better if you can do it really well. In a scene like this, they'll have almost just all dialogue and no looks, no reactions, no action going on. And so I think what that results in is maybe giving the actors and the director more latitude, because they just read the dialogue and they can talk it through and say, okay, based on this, what would you be doing? Would you be smiling? Would you be crying? Would you be shooting your angry looks? So this is a case where the writer can at least attempt to direct the story a little bit by putting in these little shots. So for instance, something like a thought suddenly comes to her. That's a visual cue for what the actress is going to do. You could say her eyes widen. But instead of getting specific, I think I've tended more to do lately is be a little bit more vague by describing what happens, instead of saying her eyes grow the size of quarters or something like you would do in a novel. Shaking and nodding, that's a whole nother topic. Some people say never write that, just have them say no or yes. But I like shakes and nods. The other thing that I don't know about struggle with, but maybe flip-flop a lot, is just using the word moment, the word beat. They share time. Again, visually, what's going on. Sometimes when you watch really awesome movies and TV shows, I will say, wow, I would like to see what is in the script. How much of that's in the script, how much of it, they just came up with on set or was in the director's vision. To me, that's super interesting. So again, I try to, I've said this a million times, but direct the script and even the shots. I mean, you can imagine after Lexi says, what then? You would have a two shot where they both react, and then maybe you would cut to a shot of Holly sort of settling down, or maybe it happens in that same two shot. And then Holly delivers her line and says about before you were born, blah, 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 of the crime family. So that introduces the Salernos, which because of Lexi's reaction, we know that she knows who they are. And so that's good. And then obviously her reaction, you can knock her over with a feather. That is, I think that leaves maybe latitude for the director / actors to say, all right, how are we going to play this? Instead of, literally saying something like Lexi pushes her chair back and looks at Holly with an air of shock on her face or something. So I think, this gives herself another moment, and I'm trying to let the scene breathe a little bit. And I think when actors / and or directors read that, they will say, okay, we've got to play this a little bit. It's because I feel like if you just write the dialogue, because I've done that and I've had a table read and it just goes boom, boom, boom. But I think part of the reason maybe is because some of my table reads have been more like high school drama students that are just used to getting through the dialogue. So, and the other thing is in a table read, of course, you don't always pause for those reactions and stuff like that, so that's probably led me to write a little more action / direction breaking up the dialogue. This is all to say that this is certainly taking a long time, isn't it? I haven't left my computer. I'm just sitting there thinking. So, backstory. I try to deliver backstory in as small and as manageable chunks as possible, because there's nothing worse than two people sitting down and talking for 3 minutes to set up a whole story, and all it is question and answer, or as we both know, which is a cardinal sin as far as I'm concerned. So again, it's funny what leads you to go back and change some dialogue, changing dishwasher to appliance. I don't know why I did that. Okay. You can just see these tiny little, somewhat meaningless changes. Usually, I hope I'm going back to remove and tighten things up. It's never fun when you go back and you go, oh my gosh, I added a half a page to that scene. Because at least for me, that rarely happens where I need to say more instead of saying less. So Holly's laying this out relatively quickly, and then of course the bombshell, she was paroled 5 days ago. Well, I've written that scene probably 3 or 4 times, and thanks for bearing with me while you watch and listen. Day 16 was relatively short, but as I say, there's no bad day screenwriting for the most part. So we'll see you again next time, and thanks again for watching.